Somerville, it's me, Janet Cormier. Thank you for letting me back into your living room, dining room, wherever you're watching, kitchen, outside, for Art at Scat. Yes, this is the show where we meet, Somerville artists, because there's so many Somerville artists. It's really hard to meet them, and they look like everybody else, so they don't have a sign that says artist, so you'd miss them like at the supermarket or something. So this is a great opportunity to meet artists. And today we have Julia Berkman, who is she uses materials like you would not believe. You're going to leave this show looking at every room in your house in a different way. You're going to look at everything, because there's no limits with Julia about what can be made into art. Basically, correct? Mm-hmm. It's like nothing is sacred, or else it's all sacred, and that's why she makes it into art. So welcome. Thank you for coming in. Mm-hmm. You take everything to a whole different level. Your eye for detail and creation is just phenomenal. So tell us, how did you start? How long have you been creating art? How long have you felt the calling for being an artist?
Well, let's see. I've been painting and drawing, seems like my whole life. When I was a kid, I did a lot of drawing and painting. My grandmother's an artist and art teacher, so I would do a lot of drawing and painting with her, and she would teach me things. And she always said, you have to do something with this, from when I was very young. And I continued, to draw and paint in high school and college, and I decided to be an art major in college. But I think I still wasn't totally sure that it's definitely what I wanted to do. I think it was till a few years after college when I started looking around to grad schools, and I was thinking of applying to grad school in art education, and I went to one of the introductory sessions, and I just felt that the way that they were talking about art, was kind of limited or felt limiting to me. And then I realized that I wanted to go and get my MFA and go for it.
Well, you had an unusual experience too, because you had your grandmother as your mentor.
Yeah.
So she gave you a perspective.
Right.
That everything else, you were beyond that. Whatever presentations they were making and what they could offer was beyond what you had been given.
Yeah.
She seemed like she was not just a role model, but also an inspiration.
Yeah, definitely.
And that doesn't often happen in families. Usually they'll say, you can do the art on the side, but get a real job,
right.
Get a real major,
Right.
And so that you had very rare circumstances.
Yeah.
And so did you start out with tradition? What were you painting initially?
I think initially when I was a kid, I really liked to paint and draw little figures, and I would make up these colorful outfits for them with a lot of patterns, and I loved doing that. And actually my grandmother also used to say that you should be a fashion designer. Mm-hmm. And as I went into high school, I think I started studying a little more, not traditionally, but in more of a classroom setting, and gravitating towards that, and taking art classes during the school year at Newton North, and also during the summers doing summer classes at the museum school. Mm-hmm. And I started out just drawing and painting traditionally, and learning to draw with pencils and charcoal. And when I first painted, I was painting with oils. When I took my first real painting class, I was painting with oils, and that was kind of a revelation for me, because it's just such a different experience than working with anything else, because they're so malleable, the way they stay wet for a while, and just the consistency and texture of them is so wonderful. So I really started out working from life, the kinds of things you do in an art class, still life, and then I also did a lot of landscapes, in college and a little bit after college, and working from the figure. I did a lot of figure drawing in college, and then, also interiors, kind of learning about perspective, and did that in both drawing classes and painting classes. And I always just, not had a heavy hand, but I always painted with a lot of texture, starting from when I first painted. It's just always how I painted.
And then, when did you start to go abstract?
Then I started to go abstract. It was kind of a slow transformation. The beginnings of it was a couple years out of college. I was taking this class at Cambridge Ed, and there was this one painting teacher there who I really liked, and I took her class for a number of semesters. And we would work from still lives, and my still lives just kind of, after maybe a year, just started becoming more abstract. I just kind of started abstracting planes, you know, whether it was a wall or a table, and also in making, kind of simplifying them or building a painting more out of blocks of color than fine details and lines. And then I started kind of inventing color based on what I was seeing.
Were you still working in oil?
Yes, and I was still working in oils. And it's weird, I don't even remember kind of doing it consciously. It just kind of started to happen.
It is a weird thing. Like like one day you're doing one thing, excuse me, and then the next minute it's like, who did that? And then you know it's you, but you weren't even aware that your hand was doing that.
Yeah, or I wouldn't necessarily think, oh, I'm working so differently or I'm transitioning into something different. It just felt like what I wanted to do was to be more inventive with the color while still having my paintings based around the three-dimensionality of the objects in the still life.
Now, is this an early painting? Or
That's a recent painting.
Oh, this is a recent painting. Okay, do I have?
It's like that.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, then there was a more specific move into abstraction, which happened when I was at Brandeis doing a postbac program. And there they pushed us to do really big paintings. So I had a studio with a big window, and I set up this crazy still life in front of the window, like with colored cloths. Like I bought these little colored lanterns. I took little bottles and recyclable things and painted them different bright colors with acrylic paint. And then I started making big and small paintings from that. And then they just started to become more and more abstract. Then I started to think about things more in terms of shape and color when I was painting. And that's when I really moved into it, was during that time. And it started from this crazy still life that I had set up.
Wow. See, the inspiration, you told us so much too.
Yeah.
About training as an artist and the transitions you go through, your materials, your choice of materials. I like the fact that you took adult ed classes also, followed with a teacher, and it shows real commitment to your craft. And also, it's always wonderful to document the evolution of an artist.
Yeah.
And even though this is probably the latest piece, as you said, if you could just tell us about this piece.
Yeah. Say over the past couple years, I have really started to simplify my palette and do paintings that might be, one or two or three colors with more simple shapes. And I kind of started going in that direction when I was doing these kind of geometric abstractions, and then it kind of was like the shapes in the abstraction. Say there were 4 squares in a painting, then there'd be like 2 or 1. They kept kind of getting bigger to fill up the whole picture plane, so I was kind of focusing in on something. And it wasn't really like I was focusing in on something specifically visual or that you could represent, or that you could see besides the painting. It was, I just was interested in the idea of kind of finding as much room or interest within one color or 2 colors, and thinking of that as, instead of being limiting, as being kind of freeing in a way.
Now, I noticed that around the rim, you have different colors. Now, were you experimenting with what colors to use?
No, when I paint, I guess it is kind of experimenting.
Like yellow and black.
Because every painting has a lot of layers, so I might start a painting out a certain way and then totally change it, and then totally change it again, so what ends up on the top could be totally different from what's underneath.
Okay, so that's what we're witnessing. And if I may, I just want to show people that you can't really see it with the camera, but it's fascinating that you can see specks like of what was possibly what was underneath.
Yeah.
And then how this develops. Now,
Right.
for your scale, do you prefer small?
I've been doing more small to mid-size recently, although kind of over the past year, 6 months, I've moved into kind of larger medium scale. Like I did one that was 30 by 40 inches.
Okay,
now I'm
that's
doing
very
another one that's 30 by 40 inches. I mean, when I was in grad school, I did ones that were like 7 feet.
Okay.
So I'm starting to go, and now I don't really have the equipment to make stretchers that big, but I can buy ones that are 30 by 40 at the art store. And I'm kind of still doing some small ones, but then moving larger, and still kind of using these simple geometries.
Now, this one is you stretch your own canvas.
Yes, although when I buy for larger canvases, because the canvas stretchers are usually not that high quality, I'll buy a pre-made one for the larger scale ones that has a crossbar and whatnot, so that it doesn't become warped. But for the smaller ones, yeah, I buy a bunch of little frames and stretch them myself.
Do you gesso?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And this is just one, it's so simple.
Yeah.
And it has a sort of retro feel to it because of the choice of colors. It's sort of that mauve-y color from the 80s.
Right.
And then it's like Julia and that 80s show. You
Right.
know, it's really cool. It's very nice.
Well, I think I was subconsciously thinking about this painting by Mary Heilman, who's one of my favorite painters, and it's this black and pink painting that she actually made in the 80s, and that is, she is kind of working within the language of abstraction, but then it has different cultural references, and that kind of referred to something about the time, like I don't remember what she called it, like funky something, but it has a little bit of a pop
Whatever
feel to
it was, I like that. Funky anything. Would
Yeah,
be good.
her work has a little bit of a pop element to it, and I don't think my work necessarily has a pop element, but I think I'm trying to bring in colors that allude to something maybe a little different. Like pink, can be kind of culturally identified with a lot of things, and I think I'm kind of playing with that, but like on the edge.
It's really nice, and the scale is really nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to handle. As I mentioned, this is the first time people will see me through the whole interview. I just don't, and I love your choice of mediums. Now, this is very fragile, and also Julia she marks it top and bottom for those of us that get confused. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, when I have them photographed also. Yeah.
And tell us about this, because this is lovely.
Well, I liked doing mixed media pieces where I can, kind of like in this painting, how I'm kind of contrasting the black against the pink. I like contrasting different things, whether it's a way of making marks, whether it's a material, whether it's color, and using, kind of regular drawing materials plus found materials that really opens things up. And for that one, it's a lot of fine little lines, so it's kind of like this little electric energy or something.
Okay,
so it's kind of grid-like, but so it kind of has some order to it, but also some randomness to it.
Pencil?
It's pencil, yeah.
Okay. And then you've added...
then that piece is something that I sewed. Actually, I was going to make had nothing to do with my artwork. I was going to make a necklace. So it's actually this black lace that's hand-sewn onto that, or I was going to make kind of a fabric necklace. And then I found it, and then I just liked the juxtaposition of the two things against each other. The black in the lace kind of referring to the gray in the pencil part of it, and it being kind of like the like black being kind of like little bits of light and dark, and like a teeny bit graphic, and then the background also being graphic, but the lace kind of having shape and graphic elements in it, kind of in a different way than the background does.
And it's almost like a study of lines.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're looking at different textures of lines.
Yeah.
And different, like you said, marks.
Right.
So you have something that is made by a machine.
Yeah.
and then you have it to the background of what initially this will trick the eye, because when you see it on in your online, it looks like a screen. It's back there. The detail is so great that you actually think she did that on screen. And is this made on, what is the?
I think it's just poster board or something.
Okay. And it's just phenomenal. And it's, as you can see, it's a small piece, but it's just very packed with a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And very simple in color.
Yeah.
And in composition, yet it's like it's all over the place. It has high energy.
Yeah.
So that's
where my work has really been going the past, say, 3 years. It's just simplifying things, but whatever it is, kind of finding a lot of energy in whatever elements I'm using, like really choosing them carefully and how I use them together, and then that kind of the two, I don't know, the energies or the different elements of whatever materials I'm using, like by themselves, but then also what happens when you put them together.
Like in this piece, you said this is pencil.
Yeah.
And again, the color, the pattern, it's easy on the eye because it's a repetitive pattern.
Right.
But there's a lot going on with it. And this is done on paper.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. Because, it's also what we see with your work is a lot of editing.
Yeah.
It's very careful, because sometimes it's easy to go big and you sort of forget. But when you keep it this size, it's a lot of detail.
Yeah.
And a lot of awareness of what you're doing. And this is a wonderful piece. Now, are these mounted on anything when they're shown, or?
I usually like to float them. So I'll have it just on a plain white background and then have the glass a little bit away from the mat so that you can see the edge and so you can see the kind of three-dimensionality of it.
When you come in, folks, to see this work, you're going to be in for a real treat, because we've had some artists and they've taken us down different paths. And this is definitely a different way of approaching creativity, to focus your creative energy. Mm-hmm. And, I'm sorry. Oh, that was embarrassing there.
It's fine.
But see.
They've been through worse.
And very flexible artist also, very flexible. And
some of the time.
Well, she is now. And also, it's not neatly cut. It's torn paper. So you'll notice that there's rawness to it.
Yeah.
And yet it's very refined.
Yeah. And
this next piece blows me away. These next two.
Yeah.
This is...
Wait, it's horizontal.
Is that it? This is a gem. If we could wear this as a ring or a necklace, this would be it. Tell us about this.
Well, in that one, that really is kind of about the playing off the ideas of hard and soft. And so when you have something that is square, but then it's a teeny bit warped, so that's something that's geometric, but then it's a little bit off. Mm-hmm. And then within that, there are these little squares that are made out of this kind of mesh. So they themselves have grids inside of them. So it's kind of like little grids within a grid. And the grid has some regularity to it, but also some irregularity to it. And I really play with that in my paintings. Is they're having some kind of overallness, but then some tension.
But this isn't a painting. Right?
Yeah.
This is not.
Oh, with everything I do. I try to get to this point. And I did just want to say it's interesting that getting to these things that are very simple, I did so many bad, big abstract paintings. There's so many paintings and went through so many different things in grad school, starting to work more representationally, combining representation, abstraction, going back to abstraction, just all these different things that I had to go through to kind of develop this clarity. So something that's, sometimes you might do something quickly, but it actually is all of the knowledge and everything you've accumulated over the time that's led to that moment.
It's the zone. The old term, it's back in the zone. Now this is to give it its shape and informality. What you've done is it looks like tissue paper.
Yeah.
So it's tissue paper. I love a little piece of tape back here to hold it together. And it's mounted on cardboard.
Yeah.
And then what you've done is taken these little this mesh. And how did you cut it, with scissors or?
Yeah, I don't even know
it,
where I found that. I found it somewhere. Someone had it, and then they gave it to me or something. And
so if you have things, you can give them to Julia.
I use all kinds of. I have all these little boxes of little things, papers and things that I find.
Maybe we can do that for your exhibit. We'll have a box, and then people can contribute.
Oh, that would be cool.
I can see Wendy's behind the camera. She's loving this. She is, because the work brings you, it makes you smile. It makes you smile, and yet you know that there's a lot of time put into it in the execution of it. And it's, it changes shape a bit because it doesn't fit the cardboard that it's mounted on. And then you play with the different, like, positioning. Everything is uniform, but it's a different size, and you might have turned it around. And it's a completely different way of looking. This is like squinting and then really closing your eyes and opening up to what the world has. And I just think it's phenomenal.
Oh, thank you.
And they do float, and it does take sort of a comic sometimes element. It makes you smile, and you feel like you're in the joke. You know what it's not an inside joke. You understand.
Yeah.
And I just think, and a little off here, I'm just fascinated with this, because the more you look at it, you see how much work you've put into it.
Yeah.
It's not like someone just stapled or put stuff together. They're really well thought out. And, okay, get ready for this one. Okay, those of you, this, ladies and gentlemen, is superb. Tell us about this.
Oh, well, I went through a phase where I was feeling stuck in my paintings, and I moved away from painting for a while. And I started doing these kind of mixed media, experimentations or projects using canvas frame. And I just had this old towel, and I don't know, going through stuff like...
Let me stop you for a minute.
Yeah.
An old towel, a face towel, terry cloth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want people to understand that.
Yeah, I think like maybe some of the face cream that I had bleached it, or someone got a little bleached or something over time, and I got a new one or something. And so I think of that as, as having different, how do I describe it? Like different aspects of materiality the same way paint does, and some of them are similar and then some are different. You have texture, you have dots, you have light and dark, you have things going in and out. And I also kind of just liked that it was something that you would, kind of something every day, and something that you may not necessarily think about.
And what are the inserts made of?
The inserts, those are, I think, like polyester satin.
From a pillow?
No, that I think I had the fabric from something else. And with that, they're more monochrome and they're kind of shiny. And so I liked that against kind of the roughness of, or kind of the comparable roughness of the towel. And then again, I'm working with the idea of a grid and with the idea of regularity and randomness. But it's not really randomness, regularity and irregularity between the different little shapes. And then I sort of think of them as maybe a collection of, I don't know, think of them kind of like little bodies of energy or something.
Well put. Now, how did you get the towel to be two tones?
It was like blue. That.
Oh, this woman is a woman after my own heart. This was already, this would be something someone would have ditched somewhere, because it's not perfect, because it's, different colors. And then, instead, she uses it in this way. Your studio must be fabulous. Oh, when you want to visit, I know that people will want to come see your work in May, because it's so much energy, and when I say there's a sweetness about it, I don't mean that in a belittling way.
Right.
It's like, you just like want to relax when you see it, but you know that you've seriously committed to this work. Mm-hmm. And people, you got to come in May and see this. Maybe we can get Julia to do a little, appearance here so she can explain this. Because you're not going to believe what you see. She did another piece with push pins, and that's all I'll say. Leave that up to you.
And screws.
That was just great. And, you know, you're an inspiration. In fact, give us a couple of words of inspiration for anyone.
I would say that people often think, or they'll say, oh, you know, I'm not at all artistic. And they basically base that around whether they did well in drawing class in, I don't know, elementary school or middle school, and, you know, whether they could draw things from life. And I think that there are lots of different ways of being artistic and creative, and that, so kind of be open to trying different things. Like I once had a student when I was teaching undergrads, when I was in grad school, who was a photography major, and he just had a lot of trouble with proportion and perspective, but then his black and white pieces were so exquisite in terms of the composition. So just kind of thinking that there are other elements than kind of the elements that you maybe see traditionally or what you think of as traditional drawing or painting.
So don't beat yourself up, you know, and explore. And come speak to this artist, because her work is, you said, exquisite for your student. I would say the same for yours.
Thank you.
It's you know, it's fun, and then it makes you, inspires you to go out and want to do something, like look at stuff. And believe me, I have enough stuff at home. I don't need to look at anything.
Yeah.
But you're going to make me view it completely different. Your work has been sensational. I thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
For being part of the show and sharing. You were so generous in sharing about technique and just everything. You just wonderful, great guest, good teacher. Are you going to be teaching anywhere?
I'm not teaching right now, and I'm not sure. Possibly in the future.
When we find out, we're going to let you know, because this is something you've got to try. It's a gift that you've given us today, just to be able to look at everything so differently. And that's what this show is about. And that's what community access is about, too. It's about giving people a voice and the eyes to go places that you normally don't go.
Right.
And we get these gifted artists, and Somerville has so many, who share. And it just becomes a learning event. And I can't speak enough for SCAT, for the crew that works here, for the artists that come, because you don't know what you're walking into. You know, there's me, and anybody who's out there who is an artist, was it painful?
No.
Okay, so anyone who's an artist, you know, and it's 2D work that we're really looking for, that can sit on the wall. If you could come and check out Julia's work, and then contact either Wendy Blum or myself to exhibit, it's great. And it's such energy. Because when I looked at your pieces online, I imagined bigger.
Yeah.
So they become like these wonderful gems when you realize the scale of them, that they're actually being held in my hands, this size and this size, and they're very simple in your choice of materials, using pencil and your colors. And I don't know, I'm blown away, because it's very humbling.
Thank you.
So I thank everyone, and until next month, when we come back in June with another artist, you got homework to do, people. There's lots of stuff out there. So, and if you see Julia, just say hi, because you know she's a gifted and wonderful artist. Until next month, as I always say, assalamu alaikum, and take care.